It all started with one decision, one careless, impulsive choice that seemed small at the time, but in reality, it was a ticking time bomb. I didn't see it coming. I thought I was clever, I thought I was untouchable, but the truth? I was reckless. And that one decision didn't just cost me a promotion, a paycheck, or respect. It nearly destroyed my entire career, my confidence, and my future. I remember the day vividly. The office smelled of cheap coffee and the faint trace of someone else's failure. I was sitting at my desk, staring at an email that would change everything. It was a high-risk opportunity, an offer to pivot my career, a shortcut to success. Everyone else was hesitant, but I told myself I was smarter than everyone. I thought I had it all figured out. I clicked yes. That click, that single moment of arrogance, set off a chain reaction I couldn't control. Projects failed. Trust eroded. My reputation, carefully built over years, crumbled overnight. I started avoiding calls. I avoided my coworkers. Every morning I forced myself to walk into the office, pretending everything was fine, when in reality, I was watching my life unravel piece by piece. What made it worse wasn't just the failure, it was the fear. Fear of judgment, fear of being irrelevant, fear of never recovering. Some nights I lay awake staring at the ceiling, imagining a future where I was obsolete, forgotten, unemployable. It's a strange feeling, realizing that a single decision can hold the power to dismantle everything you've worked for. And in that darkness I had a choice. I could let it define me, or I could rebuild from the ruins. The first step in rebuilding, owning the failure. Most people avoid it. They blame colleagues, luck, the system, anything but themselves. But I couldn't. I had made the choice. I had to face it raw and unflinching. And that's where the real work began. Not just in correcting my mistake, but in rebuilding my mind. My career wasn't just about skills or networks anymore. It was about mental toughness, discipline, and refusing to quit when the world assumed I already had. I began studying the habits of people who had fallen, failed, and risen again. I devoured books on resilience, watched interviews of entrepreneurs who lost everything, and listened to mentors who had been in the trenches. One pattern became painfully clear. Failure doesn't define you, your response to it does. Some crumble, some get bitter, and some rise so high that their past becomes irrelevant. I wanted to be in that last group, so I created a system for myself. Step 1, reflection. Every mistake I made, every misstep I wrote down in brutal detail. Not just the outcome, but the decision, the thought process, the excuses I gave myself. Step 2, strategy. I mapped out exactly how to regain credibility, step by step, in a way that was measurable, tactical, and relentless. Step 3, action. No more waiting for luck. No more hoping someone else would fix my mistakes. I started small, finishing projects flawlessly, volunteering for difficult tasks, staying late when no one else would. Every micro-action was a statement. I'm back and I'm better. But here's the thing about rebuilding, it's lonely. People will doubt you. Some will even mock your attempts. Your former peers will whisper about your fall from grace, and you'll feel the weight of every eye in the room judging you. There were days I wanted to quit, days when fear whispered that I'd never reach the same level again. But I realized something critical. Fear is a signal, not a stop sign. It was telling me I was on the edge of transformation. That edge is uncomfortable. That edge is necessary. And crossing it is what separates those who survive tomorrow from those who don't. Slowly, the pieces began to fall into place. Projects succeeded. Mentors took notice. Doors that had once slammed in my face opened slowly, cautiously. But the real victory wasn't in external validation. It was in the shift inside me. I was no longer reckless. I no longer feared failure. I no longer waited for permission to succeed. Every decision became intentional, every move strategic, and every risk calculated. I had rebuilt not just my career, but my character. And the irony? The decision that ruined me ended up being the catalyst that transformed me. Rebuilding wasn't just about work. It was about life. I realized my personal habits had been quietly sabotaging me long before that fateful decision. Late nights scrolling social media, avoiding uncomfortable conversations, ignoring my health, all small choices that, combined, had eroded my focus and resilience. If I wanted to survive tomorrow, I needed to reprogram everything. I started waking up earlier than anyone else, not to show off, but to take control. Mornings became my fortress of discipline. Cold showers to shock the system, journaling to confront my fears, and intense learning sessions to sharpen my skills. I created a mental armor that protected me from self-doubt, negativity, and distraction. Every time fear knocked at my door, I opened it only to face it head-on. The hardest part was trust, rebuilding it with colleagues, bosses, and even myself. People are slow to forgive mistakes, especially big ones. I had to demonstrate consistency, integrity, and competence over months, sometimes years. But what I learned is this: trust doesn't return because you beg for it. Trust returns because you show up every single day stronger than the day before. Little victories stacked up into momentum. And momentum, once it starts, is unstoppable. There were moments of doubt, of course. Like the day my first major comeback project hit a roadblock. I had poured everything into it: time, energy, reputation, and suddenly it was in jeopardy. I felt the old panic rising, the one that had almost swallowed me before. But this time was different. I didn't collapse. I didn't run. I stepped into the fire. I analyzed every angle, consulted experts, pivoted my strategy, and worked through nights I thought I couldn't survive. And when the project finally succeeded, it wasn't just a win for my career. It was proof that I had been remade in the image of resilience. The transformation wasn't instantaneous. Rebuilding takes patience. It takes enduring the shame of past mistakes while quietly, relentlessly building something greater. And as I look back now, I realize something essential: the fear, the pain, the humiliation. They were never punishments. They were signals. They were alerts telling me I had the opportunity to evolve faster than most, to become the version of myself capable of surviving any storm. And this is the part most people don't see. Recovery isn't glamorous. It isn't a highlight reel of victories. It's long nights, internal battles, and endless repetition of discipline. But it's also the most powerful thing you can do. Reclaim your life, rebuild your future, and redefine your identity on your own terms. The decision that ruined me? It became the greatest teacher I've ever had. By the time I fully reestablished myself, I was no longer the same person who made that reckless choice. My perspective had shifted. I stopped chasing shortcuts. I stopped seeking external validation. I embraced discomfort as a sign I was growing. I learned to predict failure before it happened, not to avoid it, but to respond to it faster than anyone else. The world doesn't wait. It punishes hesitation, and I realized that survival, real survival, is about being relentless, about being willing to rebuild again and again, no matter how deep the fall. And here's the most important lesson I want you to take away: your failures do not define you. They refine you. Every career ruin, every mistake, every moment of fear can be transformed into a foundation for something far greater. But only if you face it. Only if you refuse to let it crush you. Only if you decide that your story isn't over just because the world thinks it should be. So if you're watching this right now and you've made a decision you regret, or you're standing at the edge of a career, a relationship, or a life that feels like it's slipping away, remember this: one failure is not the end. One failure can be the start of your rebirth. The only real failure is giving up before you try again. And that's exactly what I did. I rebuilt. I learned. I became stronger. I became unshakable. And now every decision I make is intentional. Every move I make is strategic. And every risk I take is calculated but fearless. I survived the worst, and that survival made everything else possible.